Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I am Kenneth Amador, and I'm joined today with a returning guest, someone who's just been such a joy to listen to and have on our show. She's become such a rock star in the alternative media. And it seems like that's kind of got a bad rap nowadays. And it's by no offense that I give her that title. It's just that, if you want to listen to the mainstream media nowadays, it's censored. You're dealing with, agendas, manipulation of the narrative. And I appreciate people who will speak their mind, whether I agree with them or not. Lynette Zang, Chief Market Strategist of ITM Trading. We're going to be talking about the economy, precious metals. I'd like to get her thoughts on cryptocurrency too, as it pertains to what we're seeing right now and
Absolutely.
just where our society is going. It's so everything seems to be so tied in with what is happening with our money. And people ask me, do I get political? I get political to the degree that our politics affect our money, and that's become like front and center news in so many of our instances. I feel like maybe years ago you didn't have to be as interested in politics, but now it's just so tied into everything we watch, everything we do. You can't even watch sports now without politics being thrown in your face. So without any further ado, Lynette Zang, thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today.
Kenneth, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me back. I always enjoy our conversations.
Well, let's get your thoughts on where we are. Maybe we'll start high in general. Post-Trump, post the Trump era, the election going into Joe Biden, uh, what he's doing on the stimulus front, what he's doing with the vaccine rollout. Is this kind of giving the economy a bit of confidence here that's moving people away from precious metals to a certain degree, and maybe just a sigh of relief for the economy, in your opinion? And how long do you expect that to play out?
Okay, you asked me a whole lot of questions in that
I
one.
know I didn't even know where I was going with that question.
That's okay. But, personally, I don't think that it's political. I think that it really is the bottom line. Whoever controls the purse strings is really controlling everything. So I think all of this is really much more central bank driven. The government is used for legalization and promotion, but it's really being central bank driven. And, when you look at the economy, well, I suppose it depends on which economy you're looking at,
Absolutely.
because we, of course, have this K shaped recovery where you've got some people that are doing, I mean, the billionaires are doing much better than they were. And then you have Main Street where you still have like 10 million people that are not just unemployed, but potentially chronically unemployed. And none of this is really a surprise when you consider that what's really happening here is a reset of the entire system: social, economic, and financial. And, the what's happened with COVID has really sped things up and made things a whole lot more obvious. But do I think that we're in an economic recovery? No, no, no. I mean, it's a joke. Why is the stock market where it is? Why is the real estate market where it is? We'll talk about bonds in just a second, but let's just stick to those two pieces. It's because of all of the free money that they continuously pump into the system. And when you look at the latest proposal that's on the table, and we'll see what happens, tomorrow, but, presuming it gets passed, there's a lot of qualities of UBI, universal basic income, that comes into this. So I was a little bit off because I really did, honestly, I thought it would happen by the end of next year. I'm a mover and a shaker, right? So grass does not grow underneath my feet, but we can see that happening right now, actually.
Yeah.
And especially with the one that's the most obvious part, is the new child care tax credit, where they're going to give you the money. You can have it quarterly, you can have it monthly. So yeah, welcome to UBI. And just because they're pumping all of this extra money into the system, I mean, what they're really trying to do here is keep everything looking like it's nice, right? And keep the stock market floating. Deutsche Bank just did a survey and they found that all of the younger generations that they interviewed said that probably 50% of that stimulus check that they get will most likely be put into the stock market. So it's kind of like lambs to the slaughter, because even with those stimulus checks, they do not have the billionaires' deep pockets or access to more free money. So I don't care what they make it look like. The reality is that we are headed toward a huge financial crisis that will justify the next iteration into the new social, economic, and financial systems.
Yeah. It's such a powerful thing. I mean, we see what's going on right now with moratoriums, those of us with rental properties, or, you own your own home or whatnot. I mean, we're tied into the system, and you try to do your best to obviously be resilient and not so affected by what might happen with this everything bubble. But, talking to realtors, there's so many people not making their rents right now, not making their mortgage payments, but everything's just locked up because you can't evict people. You can't put people out in the street. So on paper, this should all crash, but you have all this money at the same time getting thrown at the system. So the argument too, on the flip side, is that everything needs to get more expensive to reflect the amount of dollars that are being put into the system. And that includes the stock market, which is going up crazily, and real estate, which is going up like crazy. And so from the inflation aspect of things, I feel like it does make sense that we are seeing record prices in real estate and, record prices in stock. So maybe some thoughts on that.
Well, you're absolutely right. And let's take a look at Venezuela, who, by the way, just issued a new currency. So this is their second iteration. They had the best stock market 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18 until they lopped off 5 zeros. And in an article that I was just reading on this new $1 million bill, which is the equivalent of 53 cents. But don't worry, because this year they intend to go fully digital. And then they won't have to worry about ordering in the paper. But what people also need to understand is that every time a government does that, the dollars or the fiat money, the government money that's already out there, loses value. So is it really the house going up or the stocks going up? Or is that the currency is losing that much value that it takes more of those dollars to buy the same thing?
Exactly.
And people ignore that at their own danger. And that's what, that brings in physical gold and physical silver, not the paper crap, because, that's just paper. And that's easy to manipulate and it's cheap. But the physical is getting, in some cases, we've got 3-month delayed deliveries, right? I saw that in 2008 as well, where you have delayed deliveries. You have SLV that had to change their prospectus because their ability to acquire enough physical silver to issue more shares at the same time that they had people rushing to those shares eliminated their ability to really control it. So that actually happened back in June. There are a number of things that actually happened back in June and July of last year. But one of the things that happened, you have to look at a long-term chart on spot silver versus SLV. You can't see it on a short-term basis because it's designed to track the spot market. Although with this change in their prospectus, it no longer has to reflect the spot market. But, they know this because they're looking at it on a longer term view. You can't see it on a short. It was really interesting. I was playing with the charts and, I knew that they changed the prospectus. And if you just go in and put in a year or 2 or 5 or even 10, you can't see it. You have to go all the way back to the beginning and then you can see when it broke down. And that was like June, July. And so they kept it really quiet. And even when they changed the prospectus, it's really quiet. But it tells you that in the physical markets, they're drying up and your ability to buy things are drying up, even as it gets smashed on Wall Street. Oh, I don't want silver. It's $25 and change. It's down. It's smashed. Gold is at what? 17.15 the last time I looked at it, but it was down $20 yesterday at the same time that the Federal Reserve is losing control of the 10-year bond market.
Wow.
Not a coincidence.
Yeah, and I really think it's about resilience. So many people are just getting washed out, and losing hope. Right? And we can talk about what happened last year with gold and silver going, silver getting to $30, gold getting to 2,000, and then people going, "Hey, this is the moment to watch it fall back down again," right? And then, it just seems like it has a way of getting people in at the wrong times and then demoralizing them, and then people getting frustrated, going back into stocks or getting distracted with other things, and then missing the move again. So, it's like you look at the chart with gold being up as much as it has been. How many people actually have something to show for it and haven't been washed and rinsed by the moves that we've seen with gold and silver?
I've been doing this for a long time. I personally have not been washed and rinsed because I am quite clear that gold is real money and that it does not, Wall Street does not reflect its true fundamental value at this point in time, because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing fiat currency. And if you actually understood that this currency that we work for, and we barter with, and we even try to save, and we put it in the stock market in hopes it goes up because we know that it takes more and more. We know that inflation is eroding whatever little bits of the purchasing power is left, and the central banks are completely committed to that. We need more inflation. We're going to let it run hot, right? I mean, it's garbage. You presumably couldn't hit the 2%, but that's, of course, based on what you're looking at. And they don't change behavior, they just change the rules, right? But in day-to-day things, food, energy, all of the things, education, medical, insurance, the things that we use every single day, really, they're not inflating. Really been to a restaurant or ordered in from a restaurant lately? I mean, I remember when if you spent $25 on a meal out, you had appetizers, you had the main course, you had dessert, you had a bottle of wine, and it was at like the nicest restaurant. Now what are you doing? You're paying that for
Five Guys.
Yeah. So is it
they're like $10 burgers though. That's another they're inflated just by themselves.
Well, okay, I have never actually said this, and maybe I should have say this now, but let me just say this. In the restaurant business, it is very, very tight margins. There's not really a whole lot of room. And with the breakdown of the supply chain, which has not been fixed either, it's kind of like a double whammy. So, and with all of the delivery services and all of those fees, I mean, I'm glad I don't own a restaurant at this point.
Yeah. Well, and I've talked to other bullion dealers, and there's a certain degree of that going on in with gold and silver, in terms of the supply shortages.
Exactly.
So your that connection just reminded me of what's going on with the physical. Now, just
Exactly.
tell us a little bit first, before we get to that. I'd love you to expand on what is happening in your opinion and kind of what you've observed with the 10-year bond. Maybe articulate that and share some information on that.
Absolutely. Well, I know that you remember the repo crisis in September 2019, which was really the beginning of the end. And the reason, for viewers that aren't familiar with it, the importance of the repo market, it's how corporations fund their day-to-day operations. And it's tied directly into money markets. So you have an investment account and you have some cash that you want to maintain. And so you think that a money market account is like a savings account, but it's not, because that's used to fund the repo market, which froze back in September of 2019. And then Jay Powell went in, pumped a whole bunch of money in there. We watched it. You could go on the Federal Reserve of New York's website and see how much they were pumping in on a day-to-day basis. Interestingly enough, in June, it flatlined. All of a sudden, if you go into the Federal Reserve's website to look at what's happening with repos and reverse repos, it's at zero, a big fat goose egg. What? They don't need to help that funding market anymore, or it's gone dark. And when things go dark, that means that they are hiding something. The other thing, and I just saw this the other day, TYVIX, which is the volatility index on that 10-year treasury, which is the foundation of the global market. It's the largest market in the world. It's the foundation of it. They stopped publishing it. May 15th, 2020, last day that they published it. 2 weeks before the Federal Reserve of New York went dark on what they're doing in the repo market. What do you think that means, Kenneth?
I think they're losing control, and I see what they're doing in terms of levels of stimulus, levels of attempts to contain everything. And I just don't. I think what the headline was, what 40% of US dollars that have ever been created were created all in 2020. And I think about that, and like the levels that we're going to contain the system is just going up exponentially. And how long can that go on for? That's the magic question, right? And so I see it is on one hand, it's demoralizing. We're continued to encourage to trust the stock market, trust real estate, trust the dollar, trust it to save, trust the banks. But at the same
Don't
time,
trust
you
gold,
look at the
but don't
fundamentals.
trust silver, right?
Yes, don't trust gold and silver.
Physical, in your possession. Yeah, no, who wants that? You definitely
Yeah.
don't.
Tell us what's going on, boots on the ground with supply, premiums, shortages, even on a day when gold was down $20. And what are we seeing nowadays?
Well, Kenneth, you have to understand that I don't really work directly with clients anymore. So my hands aren't in that piece, and I just get the feedback from Eric and others in our organization, the consultants. But I do know this, the premiums are not as bad as they were last April and May, but they're definitely still there because we're good in that our wholesalers are still willing to allow us to position a product with a client, but you're going to have to wait maybe 3 months before you're going to get it. Now, if they didn't think they were going to get it, we would not be able to position it. We wouldn't be able to sell it. So that's the good news. And this same thing happened in 2008, but this has been going on now for a year, for almost a year. And what that tells me, I can tell you, I'm not selling my gold or silver. I'm buying as much of it as I can, as often as I can, and I don't care what the premium is because 100%, I mean, a gazillion percent,
Right.
I know that the fiat money prices that they want you to believe gold and silver is worth they have not been reflecting a true supply demand market probably in about forever, but certainly since the central banks came in after 2008 and said, we are going to manage these markets.
Hmm.
And that's for their own protection.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, and nominally, what else can you buy that's trading below its 1980 high? Talking about silver. I mean, what it blows my mind to even think that we can even be here in silver, and of course I look at the spot price and I'm conditioned to just think, man, it's just such an uphill Mount Everest battle to get over $30. But it's nothing when you think about it. It's nothing, but yet here we are. They're constantly doing what they can to manage that. And
called
maybe
perception
just talk about that. Talk about the management of that, and maybe your thoughts on how much longer they can go on managing it. And I'll throw with this one last thing. We'll focus on silver. I know I say a lot of things and ask you a big macro question on with a million points and angles, but we'll talk about silver. When it comes to their ability to manage, some may say if it was going to happen, if silver was going to have its moment, it was going to be last March, last April, and we didn't see it.
Oh,
What do you
I
say to that?
100% disagree with that. Number one, if you are counting on Wall Street to give you a fair valuation on anything, you really need to think again because this is not a free market environment. It is a market environment, and I'm a capitalist. I will say that outright. I am 100% a capitalist, but what we're experiencing is not capitalism, it's fascism. And I'm
Mhm.
not a fascist, I'm a capitalist. So, yeah, last March, let me tell you, when gold and silver will be untethered from this is when it gets too expensive to continue to support the system. And I'm talking about for the central banks, or they lose control, which looks like is what's happening right now, or they choose to lose control when it gets too expensive to support. At that point, they will stop supporting it and they will have to reset the currency. And there is only one way, and makes it super simple. One way for 6,000 years that a currency has been reset, and that is against physical gold, because gold is the primary currency metal. And gold is all recoverable. So we can account for most of the gold, pretty much all the gold that has ever been mined or is yet in the ground. Now, regarding silver, since gold is recoverable, silver is not recoverable. So that is actually a diminishing real asset that gets used up in manufacturing. Both of them, gold and silver, have properties and qualities that have never been able to be duplicated in a lab. And they are used across the every single aspect of the global economy. So they have of anything that you can do, they have the most functionality and the broadest base of buyer. But Wall Street has turned that into a product that is a derivative. It's derived from gold and silver, but it's a derivative. It's not real gold and silver. And therefore, they can create a whole bunch of that does not nor ever will exist. They can do it cheaply, easily, quickly, and suppress the price of both of them. But when it is time, when people lose confidence, I mean, that's really what it is. As long as they can keep the public's confidence in the system, in the financial system, in the politicians, in the central bankers, then they can keep this game going. It will be worth it for them to do that.
Mm.
But that trust has been declining for many, many years. I've done studies on that, and you can see it really quite obvious. And, I think we may have a little bit of a revolution going on. Read Reddit. Now, is that really going to fix the whole system? No, but it's an indication of a growing revolution. And make no mistake, all of these global lockdowns have gone enormously toward suppressing probable revolutions that were occurring. I mean, look at Hong Kong. It's a great example. Pro-democracy, now that's pretty much gone thanks to all the lockdowns, and then that enabled the Chinese government to go in and basically weed out who they didn't like and then install what they want, and going even into the schools to indoctrinate the children and how wonderful the Communist Party is. I mean, they really were able to get complete control of Hong Kong. So, but they're not the only government that utilized these or took advantage of the opportunities that presented during the lockdown and all the things that were happening during it. I don't think that they can stop it ultimately, but I don't even know if I answered your question.
You always answer my questions, Lynette. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. It's there's so much nuance to what we're talking about. The people that are on, the elites in the system versus, the 99%. But then it could also be said that the 99% in many ways depend on the current system as is. They're not prepared for it to just get to implode. I mean, their jobs, their 401ks, their everything that we depend on as, middle-class people, it's all tied in. And so I guess to a certain degree, there's a certain amount of support coming from the masses, artificial or what have you, to incentivize everything to just keep going as is. And just because, sure, the elites might lose out when they can't control the banking system anymore and, what they're doing on precious metals, managing it. But the regular person might not be able to afford that either. So maybe some thoughts on that.
Oh, absolutely, Kenneth, because that's all part of the perception management. I mean, we've been trained not to have a garden, to go to the grocery store, to go out and buy food that's already created. We're dependent upon the grid for our energy. This was all by design. I mean, I'm not saying that I want to go back to where I have to do absolutely everything myself. That's the importance of community. And keep in mind that they always use how it will impact the public as an excuse for maintaining their bad behavior. But at some point, we just have to rip that Band-Aid off. And I think that we need to be, I'm a huge proponent on being prepared. Food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. And that is personally what I've done for myself. So if we look at what happened last March during the lockdowns, where was your pain? And then fill in those holes. So that when that happens again, because you may not want it to happen, but I got news for you. We're transitioning into a whole new system. It's going to happen. It has to happen to justify the transition. So you want to sustain your standard of living as much as you possibly can with all of those things. And going back to silver, I personally use silver for barterability. It's small, it's compact. I can keep it hidden in my pocket easily enough, and I can put a tank of gas in my car. Or, actually my current car is, it's a hybrid, so it's electric and it's gas. So that kind of helps prolong that. But I think we all need to become our own central bankers and make sure that we have sound money. That's where gold and silver come in huge. And when they are hitting it like this, even though you're paying a premium, It's a bargain. I really need to crunch those numbers. But an ounce of gold is, you know, based upon all the money that they've created, the last time I did it was before COVID, actually. And at that point, it was 12,500. So, you know, if you know something's 12,000 bucks and you can buy it for 2,000 bucks, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? And silver, at least minimum 600 bucks. You can buy it for 25 bucks, 35 bucks, 50 bucks. Why wouldn't you? That makes no sense to me at all. So I just keep accumulating, just like the central bankers are, just like the wealthy 1%. I don't know if you caught this soundbite from Lee Cooperman the other day.
No, I didn't.
I think it was the third or something. And they were talking about the wealth tax that's being proposed. And he said that if they impose a wealth tax, the wealthy will simply run to gold to preserve their wealth. Well, keep going, Lee. You need to go to gold and silver to preserve your wealth from a total reset of the system, and not the paper gold or the paper silver, which they can make as much as they want. I mean, I haven't looked at the debt clock lately, but is it something like, I don't know, 200 ounces of paper gold or silver to 1 physical ounce? I do know that before the Bank for International Settlements changed their accounting rules on the derivatives markets, that there were, because I saw this with my own eyes, unfortunately, it was before I knew how to do print screen. But for every 1 ounce of physical gold, they were reporting 62,000 ounces of paper gold or digital gold. Let's see, how easy is it to suppress the price when you can create an unlimited amount?
Yeah.
But don't be fooled by that. That's the piece. People, you know, they're afraid to do their own due diligence. They intentionally, part of the perception management is they intentionally make things so complicated and hard to find that people give up. Oh, they understand this stuff. I don't understand this stuff. But actually, they don't even understand this stuff. They're just throwing crap at the wall and seeing what's going to stick without conscience or thought much, at least in appearance, of the unintended consequences. So, yes, people are tied into the system through their 401ks, through their IRAs, through their pension plans, through their insurance plans, their annuities. And so when these markets implode, oh, they're going to be hurt. So it could make some sense to just execute that mantra: food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter, so that when that happens, you're sustaining a reasonable standard of living and putting yourself in a position to take advantage of what you personally can't stop as one person. That's a big one for me.
Powerful. And it's an amazing thing. And you reminded me of an article I read, and maybe you've talked about this too, how silver is just can be the black hole of money as it just starts to suck money into the system. Gold as well, it just compounds, and it really, you lose that control of the monetary system as people start to put money into silver. And it's the importance of being ready. I guess I like to think about human psychology and just think about things, how they work. And maybe I get a little loopy in some of these things, thinking about all the nuances, but I guess the safety net, the backstop for this whole entire crash is humans' desire for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, freedom. And in the end, that's what's gonna, in the middle of a crisis, in the middle of a crash, that's when people get resourceful and resilient and try to fix it and work together. So hopefully that happens. I was here in Texas during the freeze, and immediately you can see people getting together, helping other people. if you didn't have food, doing things to help people, your heater is out, you know, coming together as a community. And I saw that, I witnessed it. And in the end, when it's all said and done, people have that desire for sustainability, for life. I would say that's the life part of what people will go well, what people will try to do during the crisis. So maybe some closing thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I think it would be an even better idea to do it before the crisis hits, because how much warning do you want? I mean,
Everyone's buying generators now.
they should have generators. There's wind, there's solar, there's water, there's generators, so there's lots of options. You can grow a garden if you don't have the space, for a full-blown garden. You can do vertical gardening. I mean, make sure that you can buy food that has a long shelf life, canned tomatoes and rice. It's tasty eating when you're hungry. And if you put some beans in there, now you got a complete protein. So, I think that it is critically important to get this done before the crisis. I know when everybody was freaking out, I was walking through my gardens and going, thank God I had done this. Thank God. So, and I was able to share. I was able to share toilet paper. I was able to share food, and we'll do so again. But I would tell people, do not wait. I mean, let me ask you something, Kenneth. Is it not obvious that we are going through a reset right now?
Mm.
I mean, are there really people that think that this is what we're going through is just fine and everything's normal?
I would say it's very obvious, but I've come to the conclusion that we can live in different realities, and people have been able to delude themselves. Maybe I'm deluded with my own things, but I've come to realize that there's people with opposite opinions of me that are equally as passionate and as convinced that what they believe is right. And that's what's interesting to me in this whole thing, is that despite the facts, despite instinct, people can just be on complete opposite sides of the spectrum, and with genuine and very genuine, with, let's say, a good motive behind their beliefs. It's not
Sure.
just some sort of you know anti-world, or yeah, exactly. So
That is
anyways,
actually the official word for it, nudging. It's perception management. It's the normalcy bias, because what you're trying to do, what I'm trying to do, is really to get people to see the truth. I mean, when a well-positioned web of lies has been sold gradually to the masses over time, the truth will seem outrageous and the speaker a raving lunatic.
mm,
But it doesn't mean the truth isn't the truth.
yeah,
So for those of us that seek the truth, and for those, and you know what? What is the worst thing that happens? Let's assume for a moment that I'm wrong. Let's assume that I'm wrong for a moment. That
never.
everything is indeed hunky dory and this system is just great and it's just going to be just fine and dandy. Well, I have food, water, energy, security, barterability, community, and shelter. Booty, hooty, Rudy, Manooty.
Sounds miserable.
I know. I like to make the choices where it doesn't matter whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, because then I'm okay either way.
Yeah. So good. So good, Lynette. Lynette, thank you so much for coming on Crush the Street with me. If people want to reach out to you or interact with you, do business with you, please let them know where they can go and what they can expect to find.
Absolutely. Well, we have our website, itmtraining.com, and then also a YouTube channel where I post things every single week, at least 3, 4 times, etc. So we're very accessible and we like human contact. So they could even call us at 888-696-4653. And, we are here to be of service, and we actually really care about our clients. So, if you become part of the ITM family, you're family, and we take good care of you.
Thank you so much, Lynette, for coming on the show with me today. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Kenneth. I hope we do this again.